All right, guys, welcome to On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. We are truly pumped about this evening because we have our first lobbyist on the air, Jason Webb. I have here with me this evening, and Dan Hall. Jason, how you doing, sir?
Hey guys, great. Mike, I like to try to get to know somebody first before I tell them I'm a lobbyist. They start thinking about bad things before I get a chance to woo them over. So I appreciate that introduction.
Well, I was just going to say he's one of the good guys, and you all will find out this evening. So, Jason, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, family, work, and how you got into politics.
Yeah, sure. I'm a Boone County boy. I was born and raised in Boone County. My dad was a coal miner. His dad was a coal miner. Um, Moved around a little bit as a kid. Lived in Spring Hill for a little while. Went to junior high there. My stepfather got transferred to West Kentucky, so moved out there. I ended up going to UK, graduating, and moving back to Charleston here in 1996, and went to work for a law firm in their government relations department. And really, I've been. This is all I've really ever done. I've been doing it for 26 years. This will actually be my 27th legislative session in a row. And I
Wow.
represent anybody from a Fortune 500 company to national associations to private equity firms to venture capitalist funds. So I'm really all over the board. But love,
Right.
was raised hunting, squirrel hunting, growing up as a kid. We didn't have
Mhm.
much in Boone County, so we had to go to the Alleghenies and hunt in Pocahontas County, try to chase those little red deer across the mountain into Virginia. And I have a little boy and a daughter, and enjoy the outdoors with my family. And we hunt, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. So I love it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So, your son, he has a YouTube channel that he started up. He's gotten pretty hot and heavy into that, and it's J&J Outdoors, correct?
Yeah, he's probably the oldest kid not to have a SIM card in his cell phone. So we didn't give him a SIM card until this year, till he was 13. And last year he asked me if he could, he wanted to videotape some of his hunts. And I said, well, look, I'll let you do it, but you have to do it. Dad he just enjoys being in the outdoors with you, and trying to teach you a few things that I know and somebody's taught me. And so yeah, he started filming last year, and then he got on a really nice buck, and he got that on film, and he was filming with his mom's old, my wife's old iPhone 8, so it wasn't like he had any equipment. And then for Christmas and this year, he asked me if we could, maybe get him a computer that he could use to do the editing, because he does all the editing and the music, and he puts it all together. So that's exciting to
Well, that's
capture
good.
those moments,
Wow,
with your
that's awesome.
family and be able to share it. So yeah, thank you.
And for him to be doing it at that age, I just think it's awesome that he's doing that. So, you guys out there that's listening, give him a look at J&J Outdoors. Jackson's 13, and he's hunted all over the country, really. I mean, mostly in West Virginia, but he's hunted in Kentucky and Ohio as well. And he does a little fishing down south. So, give Jackson a follow there on J&J Outdoors on YouTube and Instagram. Let's go into our main topic today, if you want to. We want to be talking about CWD. That's a big topic here all over the country, really. I've heard it from Michigan all the way into Pennsylvania. We've heard a lot of it here in West
Illinois.
Virginia, Illinois. So that's one of the things that you help the outdoor community and the outdoor industry with, Jason, is when it comes to that legislation and the states trying to pass the bills to outlaw or ban these scents being used in the hunting community. So if you fill us in a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, every state's trying to combat chronic wasting disease, and what we're trying to do with the Responsible Hunting Scent Association is to essentially remove the fiction from the science.
Yes.
And when they reached out to me, West Virginia was looking to ban deer urine because they said that it spreads chronic wasting disease. And so,
Yep.
when the folks called me, I always qualify. I said, look, I'm a huge hunter, love deer hunting. It's part of my heritage. I love venison. We love, harvesting some does and donating that to the Hunters Helping the Hungry program. So I'd never want to do anything that would affect the population here or anywhere. And so I really wanted to understand the science. And they had already, they were several steps ahead of me and already reached out to really one of the world experts, in my opinion, which is Dr. Davin Henderson, who was at the Prion Research Center at Colorado State University and actually did testing of deer urine and feces with live deer, and really couldn't get them sick by ingesting them with CWD positive deer urine and feces, and he had to give them so much that they would just never in a natural environment could they ever come across it. So I said, well, look, we're spending a lot of time chasing something that just doesn't have anything to do with the spread of chronic wasting disease. And but again, I feel for all the wildlife agencies and all the states out there that are trying to combat it. It's just deer urine isn't it. It's the equivalent of somebody putting on Facebook that there's cocaine in Coca-Cola, so you ban Coca-Cola and then declare the war on drugs is over. You haven't done anything.
Right.
And
yeah.
I always joke, I'm from Boone County. I say we're looking at the wrong end of the deer. One of the interesting. Oh, my bad, Mike. There was a breakup there. My point is that my point is that if you understand chronic wasting disease, it's simply this, that it is a disease that is fatal to deer. It causes a sort of a misfolded or malformed protein to sort of agitate healthy protein next to it, sort of a domino effect. It creates this vacancy in their brain.
Yeah.
And what the researchers have found, the scientists, is that there's, if you take a gram of brain matter and you measure the amount of prions that are found in the brain matter, it would take. At one point, it was 33,000. It's been computed recently that it's actually more like 200,000, and I could pull that up here, but gallons of deer urine.
Those prions are the proteins that are malfunctioned or malformed, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Prion is essentially. I mean, I'm without getting into the science. It's essentially a malformed or misfolded protein that sort of agitates the healthy protein next to it until it becomes malformed, and then there's sort of a chain reaction or a domino effect, and it creates a vacancy in the brain that's similar to what you might find in a human that's related to CTE and NFL football players, or dementia, or even Alzheimer's. So it has a similar sort of makeup, if you will. So again, if you take 1 gram of brain matter from a CWD positive deer, you'd have to have, and I'm looking at the recent calculations, 264,000 gallons of deer urine.
Wow.
In order to have the same amount of prions as 1 gram of brain matter. That's why I say we're looking at the wrong end of the deer. No deer is going to consume that much. And it doesn't really take that much to consume it, because it only takes about 300 nanograms of infectious brain matter to get a deer infected. So that's about 10 ounces of deer urine. So a deer would have to consume 10 ounces at once to get essentially CWD from a bottle that has CWD positive deer urine in it. The deer would have to drink all of it.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere that a deer is drinking that sort of deer urine in the wild or anywhere else. They're not eating the dirt. You can pour a whole bottle out, 1 ounce bottle out. They're not eating that dirt. You and I both know, we all know, Dan, we use them as scent wicks to do cover scents, create some curiosity in the field, get them to stop, for a couple extra seconds in a shooting lane.
Yeah.
But we're not, it's not like it's congregating deer into an area. And that's unfortunate. Which again, we're trying to remove the fiction from the science.
Right. I don't know anybody that just dumps a whole bottle. I mean, I know me. A bottle's going to last me the whole season.
Well, my Jackson said it best, and we were joking about. It's like cologne, right? Jacquard Noir. Less is more. You don't pour a bunch on you.
Absolutely.
Yep. So the scientific evidence that you were talking about there was somebody that contested that we were discussing there at one point in time. Another colleague that you had met out of New York or somewhere that they tried to outlaw it there.
Yeah, essentially what happens is, I talked about national associations. Every hospital is typically a member of the State Hospital Association. They're typically a member of the National Hospital Association. So uh, all the wildlife agencies around the country are all members of AFWA. It's called AFWA, American Fish and Wildlife Association. Those are just all 50 state agencies that are members of this national organization.
Okay.
And they had essentially a consultant out of New York City that uh, read Dr. Davin Henderson's study, and his study said um, that deer shed prions through saliva, nasal
Mm-hmm.
mucus, feces, blood, urine. And then he went a step further to try to get deer sick by having them actually consume contaminated CWD, deer urine, and feces, and couldn't
Yeah.
do it until he got to a certain, level, which is unnatural, and it was concentrated, so it was, multiplied in its presence. And so then they took that information and they said, "Oh my gosh, there's prions possibly in deer urine. So deer urine spreading CWD, so we have to ban deer urine." And so that was an attempt to, one, stop CWD, and they're, without reading the study, they just kind of took this synopsis and read it wrong. And two, there's a little bit of a political motivation here to go after deer farmers. And so this is the way that they think that they can go after deer farmers and get rid of a bunch of deer farms across the country. So, we started seeing it popping up. They got a hold of me here in West Virginia. Dr. Davin Henderson, I asked him to come in and speak to the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee, and he did. And that was the scientist. He said, "Look, they're essentially taking my study and they're misinterpreting it. They're reading it wrong, and they're creating this panic. And it's a lot of wasted time and resources on deer urine when it should be spent, on other efforts." And
Yeah.
so the West Virginia legislature just said no. I mean,
Well,
they voted it down.
basically, one of the other things that we were talking about is a lot of these other people that are trying to put forth this effort is not even doing the research. They have nothing to back it up with.
Right. You're absolutely right. They're good readers, but they're not good researchers. They've never studied a live cervid in their life. They're reading Dr. Haley, who's another scientist at a university that essentially took CWD, concentrated it down tenfold, injected it directly into the brain of mice, and only 2 of the mice got CWD. And that's such an unnatural environment to concentrate deer urine down and inject it directly into the brain. And 2 of them, got sick, and the other 7 didn't.
Wow.
And it took a concentrated amount. It was like 10 times the amount, that you would normally. And so,
Yeah.
because of that, it's frustrating for me because, the truth or the facts are the facts. And whenever someone's taking the information, misinterpreting it, and coming up with their own conclusions, having never been in the lab itself or around the deer, or testing the deer, it's
Hmm.
frustrating for me because at the end of the day, I'm a paid spokesperson. I mean, I'm a lobbyist, and so I have to be sworn under oath and all those things. And but some of these unelected bureaucrats don't, and they can say whatever they want, and they can run through a theater and yell fire, and everybody reacts to it. And it's unfortunate because we're out there again. I keep saying it over and over. We're trying to remove the fiction
Yeah,
from the science.
definitely. Well, we're going to take a break here real quick, and we'll be right back with Jason Webb. This episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by Apparition Scents, an outdoor and sporting goods company based in Dilliner, Pennsylvania. All of their scents developed and hand bottled with strict attention being paid to every detail. Contact them today at 724-998-7646 or check them out at apparitionscents.com. 100% lethal or your money back guaranteed. Get a hold of them today at 724-998-7646 or check them out at apparitionscents.com. All right, guys, we're back on the limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. We have Jason Webb here with us this evening and Dan Hall. All right, Jason. So one of the things that we were looking at the other day on your website, one of your mottos is you must educate before you advocate.
Yeah, I mean, listen, everybody, relies on information. And if somebody went running down the street saying that deer urine spreads chronic wasting disease and no one else was there to tell them any differently, then we'd all want deer urine banned. We would all want it if that was the truth. The problem is that, someone took the information and misinterpreted it for sure, because we've actually talked with the actual scientists who did the actual experiments. And so we have to present that information to policymakers, whether that's legislators in respective states or wildlife agencies or officials. And once we, kind of provide them with that information, the actual, the facts of what's going on, then they look at it and they're like, well, my gosh, you've shown us the science and you're doing all these safeguards. We should allow deer urine. I mean, this is not the culprit here. And so, now we've gone back to several of the states that had bans, and we're able to get those bans overturned and get them to adopt, reasonable regulations that says, look, if you're participating in the deer protection program and the urine's being tested and it doesn't contain the prions or any prevalence of CWD, then they should be sold, because that's, we've relied on these products for years to help us in the field.
Yeah, there's only so many times that you can test something and, get behind the scientific evidence. Isn't that what we've heard for the past 2 years? Get behind the scientific evidence?
Yeah. Yeah, and gosh, that's been a huge debate. And, the difference here is that you can, you can actually go in, and you all, listen and go Google Dr. Davin Henderson. Go Google Dr. Nick Haley. And look at it yourself and look at the YouTube interviews and read the studies yourself, and then you'll realize is that, again, we're looking at the wrong end of the deer here. The brain contains 1 million times more prions than deer urine or feces, and it just in a natural, as they say, a biological relevant route. There's no way to spread chronic wasting disease through deer urine. Now, if you can go wrestle down a deer and pour 10, 12, 14, 16 ounce bottle of deer urine that contains CWD, and you make sure the deer swallows it all, well, yeah, you could probably begin to affect deer in your area, but that's just not how it works. Or if you're taking deer urine and concentrating it down and injecting it directly into the brain of mice, well, yeah, we probably shouldn't allow those two things to happen. But if you're just using it the way we've always used it, it doesn't. It's not the culprit.
Yeah. So we're going to take a break here real quick, and then we'll be right back with Jason Webb. This segment of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by AMG Network Hosting, LLC, a national independent agent for most major telecommunication service providers. If your business is in need of internet, phones, credit card processing, let AMG Hosting help you compare options. They work with over 100 national carriers, and they can help you choose the best option for your needs. Our independence means we are loyal to our customers, not a brand or a company. Call us today at 304-608-3653 or visit us at amgnhconsulting.com. amgnhconsulting.com. Phone number again is 304-608-3653. AMG Network Hosting, LLC. All right, guys, we're back on the limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. We've got Jason Webb here and Dan Hall. So, Jason, I think Dan has a couple questions he'd like to ask you.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about the legislative process. Where it goes from crafting a bill, presenting a bill, combating it before it gets passed. All the steps involved with it.
Yeah, great question, Dan. Each state is different. In West Virginia, this particular issue came before it was a rule that was put forth by an agency. And, I appreciate the process that West Virginia has where all state boards or all agencies and departments have to promulgate a rule, and that rule has to come for the legislature. The only one out there that I'm aware of is the State Board of Education. Those policies don't come for the legislature to be approved, but all other state agencies are required. The only other exception is I'm not sure about the Public Service Commission. They may not have to go through the legislature either. But DNR put forth the rule again because they got best management practices from AFLA, who got a misinterpretation of some data from some New York City consultant, and so they put forth this regulation, and the regulation found itself before the legislature, and so that's where I had to go in and bring in the expert who actually did the study, and he actually presented to the legislature on this issue, and the legislature said, this is just. We should not be banning urine in West Virginia.
Right.
We're wasting a lot of resources and time and effort on something that's not going to do anything at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And each state is different, Dan. Some states agencies don't have to go before a legislature and don't have to have legislative approval. And my gosh, that means that unelected bureaucrats can make law, in a state.
Yeah.
And then you have to go and get the legislature to do something, and that's
crazy.
That's a tough place to be.
Then
it is.
Yeah, then you're trying to fight that to get it overturned.
That's right, exactly, and we've had to do that. We've had to go into different states, and we try to work with the agencies and provide them with the information. And sometimes they're not willing to change it or to adopt reasonable standards. Like we're happy if the deer urine, essentially you allow deer urine that has been tested through the RT Quick and labeled as such, so that you and I and everybody else can recognize those in stores as being tested. You know that there's safeguards there and give you the confidence in using it. And we'd be happy if those states that had the bans would pass that, because that seems like that's reasonable. And that's, again, the science and the safeguards into one. But otherwise, you've got to go to the legislature and have them overturn something that the agency did, which is what your point was, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
So,
man.
how many states are you working with right now for all of this?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working in about a dozen states over the last couple of years, and we've had some successes. And sometimes states will reach out to us and say, "Hey, we're looking at this issue. We CWD is on our borders, or we've just found CWD in one of our counties," and so they'll reach out to someone in the industry or Dr. Davin Henderson and say, help us understand what's going on here, and we try to provide them with the information that they need to make informed decisions, because you and I both know decisions that are based on bad information lead to bad decisions. And so
Absolutely,
we've been working in about a dozen. Yeah, we've been working about a dozen states. So
nice.
We've been pretty successful in those states, and we're going to continue to work with states and state agencies and officials and legislators in different states to try to make sure they have the best, the most accurate, and the most current information available to them.
Sure. Another quick question: what could you recommend to help people? A lot of people trying to combat it in their area. What can you recommend how to deal with it and the state as a whole?
Yeah, Dan, that's a great question, and I've always said. In fact, I wrote an article in the State Journal several years ago, is that the smartest person in the room is the person who says, I don't know. And so on that question, I want to leave that to the scientists.
Yep.
I don't want to
Sure.
answer a question. I think that some of the best management practices that I have found in other states from researching this is, not moving carcasses around. Making sure that we're treating those deer in the CWD area, like around Hampshire County, that we're making sure that they're being tested. Not transporting those carcasses, say, to Mingo County and butchering them up, throwing them over the side of the hill, because unless they've been tested. So following what the West Virginia DNR has in place and following what each individual state has come up with as their own best management practices, and make sure that you're following the law, because as Mike talked about,
Right.
early on in this interview in the podcast, is that, I am hunting in Ohio and I am hunting in Kentucky, and I want to make sure that I'm following the laws in those respective states. So just try to follow whatever the best management practices are in those respective states that you find yourselves in, and they're a little different, in each state. So, but that's a good question, Dan. I appreciate that one.
Yeah, thank you. Have you noticed more uptrend in different states? Like, are more states more prevalent to it, or is it just it's kind of everywhere right now?
Well, the latest that I saw is that there has been an indication that there are approximately, I think, as many as 30 states where CWD has been detected. So roughly 30 states, there has been a case of chronic wasting disease.
Wow.
The other thing that scientists are finding and researchers are finding is that some deer in certain areas are not as susceptible as other deer in certain areas. And so maybe nature has a way of combating this. But I don't think we have 100 years to wait on nature to figure this out. I appreciate even though I disagree with agencies about banning deer urine, because it's just absolutely silly to do it. I appreciate their passion in trying to protect the heritage that all of us enjoy so much, not only as adults now, but probably as kids with our grandparents and uncles and brothers and cousins and everybody else, and going to camp. And deer season was a big deal to me growing up as a kid. I mean, I looked forward to it as much as I did Christmas as a kid. So,
absolutely.
I appreciate everyone's investment in this, and I know you guys do, and everybody else in the industry, and anybody else who's out there trying to enjoy this passion that we love. So,
yep, sure are. Well, one of the things that we like to do in every podcast is we like to do a salute to service. So Dan has the salute to service that we will be doing this evening.
Yeah, I do. It's John Myers. He served in the Marines from 1999 to 2003. He served for a year and a half overseas in Afghanistan, where he won the National Defense Good Conduct with a Bronze Oak Leaf, an Afghanistan Campaign Medal, a Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Medal, as well as an Iraqi Freedom Medal. He was honorably discharged, and he got out as a Lance Corporal. No, I'm sorry, he was a corporal. He got out of the Marines as a corporal. And we just like to thank you for your service for our country, and God bless you, sir.
Yes, thank you, John Myers, for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you for your service. Yes, sir. Thank them all.
Yes, every one of them. That's one of the biggest things that we want to do in our podcast. Our platform is God, family, country, and everything outdoors. So we want to make sure we incorporate that in every episode. And we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back with Jason Webb. This episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by Top Down Construction, a local construction company located in Hurricane, West Virginia. A veteran-owned and operated construction company ready to tackle any project. With over 25 years of experience in the industry, They offer a wealth of knowledge from design to completion. Contact them today at 304-415-2203 and let them make your dream a reality. You can also check them out on their Facebook page or call them today at 304-415-2203. All right, guys, we're back on the limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. Today we've got Jason Webb here with me and Dan Hall. So we're just going to wrap things up this evening. I know when I introduced you earlier, Jason, as a lobbyist, I wanted to kind of give people the shock in the beginning, but just telling you a little bit about Jason. We sat in our shop the other day, and I basically was honest and upfront. I was like, so this is my first time talking to a lobbyist. You're going to have to explain to me, what you guys do, because, like we talked during the break, the persona that we have most of the time on lobbyists is that they're the bad guys. But on the other hand, these guys are out there, fighting for the things that are good. Like one of the things I was talking to Jason about, I said, so where you own your own business and you're not lobbying for somebody that can really tell you what to do, what to believe in, and different things like that. I think that happens sometimes. And you can elaborate on that here in a little bit, Jason. But, I asked him, I said, so you can turn down some things that, say you have somebody that would come to you and ask you for your services, and that's not something that lines up with your morals or your views or anything like that, and like the way you live. And he's like, well, of course. He was like, that's definitely, I'm not going to fight for something that I don't believe in. So I can definitely tell you that this man is fighting for things that he truly believes in and is doing a good service for us. Yeah, I mean, honestly, all of us should be an advocate in some area of our life. I mean, we should advocate for something at some point, and it doesn't have to be all the time, but you should have something that you're advocating for in your life or your family.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Mike, you were saying that we all need to be an advocate. You're absolutely right, and I think we do. We're all advocates at different points in our lives. We've participated in little league coaching or going to different churches, and so we are advocates, and I appreciate being more of a professional advocate, if you will, and trying to carry a
Yeah,
little bit
definitely.
of the load at the Capitol on behalf of different groups. And I've been fortunate. This will be my 27th legislative session in a row, so I've been doing this for 26, 27 years.
Yep.
My accountant said the good news is I only have to do it for 20 more years, and the bad news is he told me the same thing 5 years ago. So I don't know what's happening there. Maybe it's the stock market or inflation or something, but I'm not getting ahead.
Sure.
Well, another thing that we like to do during our podcast is our verse of the day. So today, our verse of the day, I think, fits it pretty well. Proverbs 27:1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. I think that's a really great scripture to go with what we've been talking about. I mean, we're talking, Jason, I know you don't like to talk about these things, but we're talking to Jason Webb this evening that's deals in the big leagues with most of these companies and's out there fighting for us. And he's been around a lot of different people that he could have plenty of time to boast about, but he's not that kind of person. And I just want to let you guys know that and know how much of a great guy that he is. And Jason, we just really appreciate you being on the show this evening. We appreciate your time. We had a little bit of technical difficulties there earlier, but I think we got things ironed out. And we have some really great information that we went through. And I think this is going to be one of our most viewed or listened to podcasts, just because of the information and the interesting information that we've put out.
Well,
yeah, it's
again,
definitely been a
Mike,
pleasure talking
Dan,
to you.
thank you all so much. And I would encourage people to. Oh, thanks, Dan. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I appreciate you all having me on, but I appreciate what you guys are doing, man. The slate calls you guys are making, Mike showed me those. Those are as sharp as a call as I've ever heard in my life. And I learned a free call, as a kid. So I use I don't just use my mouth. I don't use a call, but I want to get some of these because I just think we use a bunch of the ones we've gone to stores and kind of gotten a line, my son and I, and scratched them out and see how they sound. But what Mike did the other day in his basement was just phenomenal. And I love the fact that you guys are homegrown. I love the fact that you guys are West Virginia. And so I tell people to go, check out your all's website, nature'svoicegamecalls.com, and that you guys have a bunch of stuff on there, and deer season's on us, so get that stuff ordered.
Yep.
That may sound like a free advertisement,
yep, absolutely.
But I just appreciate
We'll
what you
take
guys are doing. You and Mike, Dan, I do. I can't say enough.
Well, we thank you.
We appreciate
and,
it. Yep.
And again, thank you for your time, and we appreciate everything. I think we're going to try to do a part 2 segment to this. It won't involve CWD, but it has some more of the legislative process and some of the different things that Jason has fought for here in our state and across the country. So we're looking forward to that. And everybody be sure to tune in and watch our Facebook page there, On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. Everybody, we thank you again, and you all have a good evening. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. See you all.
Thanks, guys.